Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Hey, listen up and don't skip over this. Before we get started, I want to let you know that I am giving away completely free copies of my latest best-selling book, The Only Skill That Matters. This book is going to teach you how to upgrade your memory, read faster, learn more, and conquer your dreams. And it contains all new content written for 2020. Now, again, I am giving away completely free copies of this book. All you need to do is pay shipping and handling. So to pick up your free copy as a listener of this podcast, visit freelearningbook.com. That's freelearningbook.com. Greetings, SuperFriends, and welcome to a wonderful episode, lovingly crafted, thanks to a review from Bacchus1987, who says, "Good luck, 5 stars. I'm certainly sad to hear that this fantastic podcast will be ending after 300 great episodes, but I can't wait to see, or hear rather, what Jonathan does next. I wish him the best of luck with the new project, and I know I'll be digging through the Superhuman library for years to come." Wow, thank you so much. It is so uplifting to hear that someone's still listening, but also that you will continue to be enjoying and benefiting from the library, and that you'll be joining us for whatever comes next, whether it's another podcast or more YouTube or whatever it may be. So thank you for that wonderful review. And on to today's episode. Ladies and gents, today I had a wonderful guest. I knew I was going to enjoy this episode, which is why I gave it one of these coveted final 5 spots, and yet I enjoyed it even more than I thought I would. The guest is Kati Morton. She is a clinical psychologist and a family and marriage therapist, and she runs a private practice in Santa Monica, California. But you probably will know her for her internet activities, where over the past 8 years, she's leveraged social media to spread mental health information worldwide through video. She's worked with folks on eating disorders, self-harming behaviors, and many, many more things. In fact, at the time of this recording, she has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, 75 million views. She's appeared on all kinds of traditional media as well, and she has published a number of books. Her first book, Are You Okay? A Guide to Caring for Your Mental Health, was released in December of 2018. Now, why did I enjoy this episode so much? Well, first, as you can tell, Kati talks about how it's so important to have a connection with someone if you were going to work with someone on your mental health. And she and I immediately had an awesome connection and shared understanding about just how hard times have been for a lot of people, whether it's economically, socially, the anxiety we've all been facing. And I felt like this was just the right episode for where I've been, really in a lot of pain about the environmental situation, the social situation, the political situation, and just feeling the weight of the world and a lot of the suffering that so many people out there are enduring. So this was a phenomenal episode because Kati gave some very, very practical and ingenious techniques for immediately alleviating some of that pain. And I thought, what better way to share with all of you, and what better time as well. So pay special attention when she starts talking about the shake. Pay special attention when she talks about building thought bridges, because I thought those 2 key ideas were massive, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. So without any further ado, please meet my new super friend, Kati Morton. Kati Morton, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
You know, it's been a challenging few weeks, months. It's now dawning on me that we're almost a year into coronavirus scare. So I'm really excited to talk with you today about mental health.
Happy to assist.
Yeah. So Katie, for those in our audience, I tried to cover it a little bit in the bio, but I never managed to capture all the awesome that is the average guest on our show. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are, your origin story, and how you came to be a thought leader in the space of mental health?
Yeah, so I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been practicing since 2009, I guess. And I ended up on YouTube. That's really where this all started. Back in 2011, my husband, but then boyfriend, went to an event where they were talking about the power of YouTube and the power of reaching people and owning your audience and getting to talk to people directly, educate, all that good stuff. And he came home from this event and he was like, you need to put stuff online. You need to teach people about, I specialize in eating disorder work. And I was complaining to him how nobody really understands it. And there's not a lot of treatment options for people. And he was like, you need to talk about it online, like educate people. Then other people can know. And, he gets really excited about it. So he was very excited. And like any therapist, I was like, no, I don't want to be on camera. That's
Right.
not a goal. And then he started sending me videos from other people and was like, no, this is something people do. You can really make a difference. And so, back in 2011, we put out the first video, and it's been about 8.5 years of creating content each week on YouTube, just educating started out with eating disorders, but because nothing happens in a vacuum, it's expanded to all things mental health related. And then this year I launched my own podcast, Ask Katie Anything, where I answer, my viewers' mental health questions in a more long form, in long form. And I had a book that came out in 2018 called Are You Okay? And I guess that's where I've come from and that's what I'm doing.
That is so cool. And it is so refreshing to be reminded, I think, of the good potential of social media and creating content. Because right now, I don't know about in your friend circle, but in my friend circle, everyone is watching The Social Dilemma and just completely swearing off social media because of a lot of the psychological effects. And YouTube is right up there with them. But it's nice to be reminded that there are people still doing good on these platforms like yourself.
Yeah, I think with anything, there's always a light and a dark side, I mean, I personally, especially because of quarantine, I have been more, I don't know if it's like, I guess more quick to unfollow or mute people. And I don't spend as much time on social media anymore. I think just because it's not the connection that I want and because it's not in person, right? That's the ideal connection. And
right.
I'm also just more acutely aware of how I feel before and after I engage with social media. And so I've really curated the content that I'm going to digest. And I think people should be a little more mindful of that. And hopefully, then they'll feel better. Because I think that's the thing is, after you watch a Social Dilemma, after you just consider like all the negatives, it's like there is positive, but we have to find that. You have to seek it out. It's not.
Yeah, and I think it's on us to apply pressure, that our psychology should not be used against us. And they don't talk about this so much in the documentary. And I do recommend everyone in the audience watch this documentary so you know what we're talking about, but also so you're aware that, there are very, very smart people who are using your psychology against you, whether it's the psychology of addiction or, they don't talk about it so much, but the psychology of fear of missing out and fear of not being socially accepted, which is one of our biggest drives psychologically, is the need to feel accepted and part of our community and get validation from others. And that is being leveraged against us for profit.
Yeah. Well, not all therapists or psychologists end up working in clinical work, right? So you could take your education, you can probably get paid big bucks at Facebook or whatever to make people want to stay longer. It's really crazy.
Totally. So you were very humble in your description, but you have quite a following on YouTube and on the interwebs as a whole. I have here, I think by the time people hear this, over 1 million subscribers, 75 million views. Congratulations. That's incredible.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's funny because forever you think like, 1 million would be just so insane. Like to get 1 million subscribers is wild. And we just hit it just a few days ago. And And I was like, wow, that's really cool. It was such a, not that it was like anticlimactic, but I'm like, awesome. Like that many people have seen the content. Hopefully it was helpful. Like when we started, we're like, oh, if we help one person, all the effort would be worth it. And now it's just wild. What that's the good that social media can do, right? Access to resources 24/7.
100%. 100%. What are some of the big things that you're seeing? I definitely want to get into the pandemic, the recession, and the madness that's going on, and a lot of the negativity I think that we're all subjected with. But I want to ask, what are some of the things you're seeing with your demographic? What are the psychological challenges that people are facing most commonly?
Well, the thing that I want everyone to understand is that so the way that our body is created, our nervous system, is really in part to keep us safe. Okay. Meaning that like if you and I are cave people and we hear what sounds like a bear, our body's going to prime us to run away, right? We're going to go into our stress response, fight, flight, freeze. And then we're going to make a decision like, okay, do we jump out of our cave and run away? Do we get quiet? Do we freeze? Do we hide in here? Play dead? And I know that sounds like silly. And you're like, what does this have to do with the coronavirus or people reacting and getting angry? But COVID-19 is a threat, right? A threat is something that could hurt us or someone we care about. And it's definitely that. However, because it's an invisible virus, we can't take action. We can't fight, flight, freeze. We can't really run away or do anything. Our body is readying us for action, and then there's no real action to take. Therefore, we have all of this like stress response energy like coursing through our bodies with no release. And what that leads to over time, for those of us who already tend to be what I would call like anger in, meaning we're not really expressive. We don't feel safe telling someone like, hey, screw you. Or, you're such a jerk, like shouting. For those of us who aren't comfortable doing that, we're turning it in on ourselves. And then we're just filling up with this frustration, this energy, this upset. And we can feel anxious. We can feel depressed. And then for those people who are more apt to be anger out, we can rage at people. We can be more on edge. And I think that's what we're seeing not only play out like in person, because I'm in Los Angeles and there are a ton of very peaceful protests, but there's a lot of riots and a lot of angry, aggressive behavior. And then even online, we see it in comments. People are a little more judgmental, rude, angry, hurtful.
How much of that is normal, natural, and to be expected? And how much of that, I practice kind of radical, extreme ownership. And so somewhere in me, I fundamentally believe, we're responsible for our own emotions. But I do want to ask, there are different peoples at different levels in their journey and consciousness and awareness. So for the average person, I guess I would say, how much of that is normal and natural and to be expected? And how much of it can we really hope to work on ourselves and get under control? I was having a dialogue with my wife today around, this is a legitimate time and reason to be sad. And yet we both try to practice control over our own emotions and ownership. I chose to feel this way, whether or not I know it or not. I chose to be sad and depressed and upset. And yet, if ever there was a reason, 1 million deaths, race riots all over the country, millions of people out of work, those are pretty good reasons.
Yeah. And I think it's tricky because yes, I agree with you and your wife in the stance that like we all make choices about how we react, right? We can't control the world around us, unfortunately, even though as much as we want to, we can't. We can only control ourselves. However, I do think that there are like extenuating circumstances, or like this is a very intense, unprecedented, like people use that term a lot, but it really applies here. Like I'm 36 years old. I've never experienced anything like this. And it's the one time in my private practice where my patients are going through the exact same thing I am. That's a weird thing, right? Like usually if a patient comes in and they've had a trauma in their past, like I personally haven't been traumatized as a child or anything like that. And so it's like, I'm usually able to see it from a different perspective, but now we're all in it. And I do I do believe that we are all responsible for how we react. And there are things, the good news is there's always things that we can do, right? Like one of the ways to get that energy that I was talking about, that like our body readies us for action. One of the ways to get that out is to actually shake out your body. So everybody every day should be doing like a full body shake, which I know sounds weird, but it's part of, like, neurologically speaking, we know that it calms our nervous system down and returns it to baseline. And so if you're feeling, it's if people want to do a deep dive on research, it's Dr. Peter Levine. He's a psychologist, and he studied animals in the wild who were constantly under threat, and how they didn't show any, he wanted to learn why they didn't show any signs of PTSD, right? If we're constantly worried that we're going to die, how come they aren't like hypervigilant? How come, they aren't like always frightened in, running quickly? How come they don't do that? And it was because after they run from a threat and they get to safety, they shake it out. They do like a wet dog shake, like toe to tail. And so he applies that to his work, and he's found it to be very effective. So if people can just kind of give it a shake, like for a while I was doing these funny, I call them funny because I'm not a dancer, but it was like dance workouts online, but it just made me feel better because it was like moving my body, and shaking out kind of that extra energy. So those are things that we can do. Also taking action where you can, like if it helps for you to clean your house or organize. I think that's why we saw a huge increase in that kind of activity when quarantine first was happening, is because people could finally, it was like something that they could do even though they were stuck at home, right? I had something that I could take action with. Yeah. And anything, that's also why we saw people hoarding food and toilet paper. I don't know if you had that happen where you are.
Right.
But it was part of that like survival / this is something I can do to soothe my system. It's like, we're not going to die. We're going to be okay. It was that kind of reminder that people need. And so there are things that we can do. And I think if people could just focus their energy on that, they wouldn't be so easily upset and lashing out at other people. Because back to your original point, we are responsible for our own actions, our words. They have impact, they affect others, and we should be very careful and mindful as we choose them,
That's so profound. I want to underscore two things that you shared. One, just the simple tip of shaking it out, I've never heard and is so profound. Of course, I'm going to go on your YouTube channel and watch videos of you doing it, so I make sure I'm doing the Dr. Levine and Kati Morton approved shake. I don't want to, just be shaking for nothing. But also, I love that point about just doing something. One of my mentors once taught me, motion in any direction creates motion in every direction, in the sense that when you feel stuck, I often refer to it, the way I explain it to people is Newton's laws, right? A body in motion wants to stay in motion, a body at rest. So it doesn't matter how much motion, like when you push the 8-ball or the basketball, when you push the ball just a little bit, it doesn't actually matter how much, you're creating that initial sense of movement and inertia and changing the state. And sometimes I need to be reminded of that myself, because I have been, Kati, in this super fatalistic place, specifically about the environment. Listeners of the show will know that I took all the George Floyd stuff very, very hard, but then it just went straight into environment, California wildfires, massive iceberg melting in Greenland. And I'm just in this state of like, what's the point? What can I do? Like, I just feel like it's too late.
I think a lot of people feel that way in general. Like we have so many factors, right? Everything happening right now feels very end of the world. Kind of depending on which one you want to pick, like pick your poison, which thing do you want to focus on and feel devastated by? And I think it's part of the mindfulness component that is so difficult for so many of us. Just to make a quick little joke, because I thought this was so funny, is being in quarantine and being forced to not engage socially for just a little while. A lot of people could have taken that opportunity and really gone inside themselves. What are things I'm doing that I think are good? What are things I want to improve? How am I as a person? All these things. And by and large, people were like, no, I will not do that. I will learn how to make sourdough bread. I will make tons of banana bread. I will clean my entire house. They were like, I'll do anything except acknowledge that life is finite, that there are risks, there are bad things happening, but that doesn't mean I have to be taken down by it. And I think it's that, like, we can be aware. We all know that life is going to come to an end for each of us at a certain time, but
Right.
people get so scared of considering that. And I feel like we would all be better people every day if we just recognize that and acknowledged it in a real way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, and I also loved your point, it was a lovely counterpoint, building point, really, where, creating motion, anything that you do, just creating action, whether it's cleaning your room or baking banana bread, is going to make you feel better. But that doesn't mean that all those actions are created equally. And certainly, things that allow you to look back on this time and not say, oh my God, I lost a freaking year of my life to this pandemic, which is, I think, how a lot of people are starting to feel. Like we're rounding out the end of the year. We're approaching very quickly the last quarter of the year.
I know.
And it's remarkable to me. And we have no sign of this disappearing anytime soon. I'd love some more tips on how people can stay positive and optimistic. That first one of shaking it out was so good. I feel like we should just spend the entire episode on just Kati Morton's tips for staying positive in a pandemic.
Well, the next main tip, and the thing that I would encourage people to do as much as possible, is find true connection. And we know that that's like not to get too sciencey on people, but there's the real antidote to our stress response. So we can get that energy out, we can shake it out. But then in order to keep it out and to keep our nervous system calm, we have to find true connection with other people. And if you want to go down a deep dive again, I always like to give people the little cookie crumbs so they can follow if they want to do the research. But you can read about Dr. Stephen Porges and his polyvagal theory. We know that our vagus nerve is responsible for igniting our nervous system or calming it down. And he found a third, which is it can be ignited through social interaction and calmed at the same time. And that's actually the ideal way that our body likes to feel. It's like the most comfortable for us is to be, like you said, like if you don't want to feel stuck, right? So we don't want to be completely calmed and tired all the time, but we want to feel like energized in a positive way. And true connection does that for us. And so whether that's through FaceTiming or Zoom, it still works. It's not ideal. The real ideal connection is in person. And I know that's tricky with the coronavirus because it is a highly contagious, virus. But if you get tested, or if you and your friends are quarantining, then you decide to get together, I've encouraged my viewers to find like your quarantine group. And a lot of people have already done this because it's been going on for a long time. But if you agree with each other to be responsible and you only will see each other, you can have a group of people who really know you, who care about you, and you can have those tough conversations. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to talk about all the things you had to grieve this year. Maybe we're grieving the loss of a loved one, or maybe we're grieving a vacation we've been saving up for years and now it's canceled, or a wedding or a birthday, it sounds so silly and trivial, and people can be like, well, there's bigger things going on. Well, no, what's big for you? Just because someone else has pain doesn't negate your ability to feel it as well. And so connecting with others, sharing in the experience is really that the antidote to that energy and upset that we may be feeling. It might even feel like it's like built up to the point where we don't even know how to cope with what we're going through.
That's a really, really important point. I read a couple of years ago, I don't know if this is the same research, but that despite the fact that when we have a hard day or a stressful day, the thing that we've all been conditioned to do is mindless scrolling on social media or flip on Netflix. But actually, if for those biohackers in the audience, the scientifically proven much more effective way to actually dissipate that stress is social interaction. And this is, they've also, again, if we're talking about the same study, I don't remember the name of the author, but they tested this in introverts and extroverts as well, which is fascinating. And I always thought, after a long day of really intense work, but it turns out that social interaction is not the same as work interaction and emotional labor, as they call it. So that's a really lovely and wonderful point, because I think a lot of us have thrown our hands up with, I can't see people, so I might as well just. And the fact of the matter is, it's not serving you.
It took 100%. And I think the thing that people don't realize is just how much social interaction we get on a regular day pre-COVID. Like I've been talking to my audience about this, but I've heard from a lot of my patients too, like how much we just miss stranger interaction, like morning with someone you don't know, but you just smile, or like, oh, I'll get the door for you. Like little things that remind us of the good in other people and remind us that we're not alone. Like we're not getting any of that in the way that we used to. And sure, a lot of things have opened up in their own ways. And so maybe some people are getting a little bit of that, but with masks on, we can't see smiles. We can't get some of that like dopamine hit, which is, like the chemical in our brain that makes us feel good. Mm-hmm. It's like we're not getting that reward for the social interaction. And that's why it's really important that we have real contact with people where we can see their face and we can see them smile and we can have real conversations. It's important now more than ever.
I had not even considered that as a huge element of just, and I'm sure the more spiritual people in the audience will call it energy, other people's energy. Mm-hmm. The science enthusiasts in the audience will call it, dopamine and pheromones, but whatever you want to call it, it's like a huge part, even for those of us who identify as introverts, has just been taken. And we need to, in the same way that, we did a whole launch and a week's worth of free broadcasts and all kinds of stuff about how you need to take the responsibility to ensure you're still getting the same exercise physically. I think, I don't know about everyone in the audience, but I'm certainly guilty of not putting in the extra effort to maintain a certain level of social interaction that would definitely suit my condition.
Yeah, it's hard, right? I think for a lot of us, we did all these Zoom hangouts and FaceTimes and texting and calling, and we did all this stuff at the beginning and we kind of burnt ourselves out on it. And so I think
totally
part of it is like finding a way to integrate this into your life. And it's almost like the reason I hate diets, right? Not only because I'm an eating disorder specialist and diets are terrible, but I think that, that diet mentality applies to a lot of things. And we can't do this like black and white, all or nothing way of socializing. We have to find a way that's like easy for us to maintain long term. So how do we apply social, like how many interactions would you have like true connection in a week? Maybe it's like 2, that seems fair. Obviously we're going to be like, you're with your wife, I'm with my husband. Like we have that connection always, but how often would I go out with my friends to catch up? Like once a week, maybe twice. Okay. So that's what that's the goal, right? Is to get it back up to that level. Yeah. And how do we do that in a way that we can maintain, and holding each other accountable? I think that's a great resource too, is like telling your friends, hey, I want to increase my social interaction. So please bug me,
I love that.
Be annoying. Tell me you want to see me. Like, don't let me stay on the couch. So, we can all help each other.
All right, let's take a quick pause and thank this episode's sponsor, BlueBlock's blue light blocking glasses, the only blue light blocking company in the world that create evidence-backed lenses for filtering blue and green light. Their Australian lab-built lens technology is fitted into the most fashionable frames, and they can even make prescription and reading glasses in their optics lab. So whether you want to wear their Sleep Plus glasses that block 100% of blue and green light, their Summer Glow mood booster glasses, or even blue light computer glasses that don't have a yellow tint, BlueBlocks has you covered. Now, I like to wear the Sleep Plus glasses 2 to 3 hours before bed, and they really, really help your sleep. I also like to wear the daytime ones for reducing digital eye strain, headaches, and lowering stress. Now, BlueBlocks has free and fast worldwide shipping, and if you use code SUPERHUMAN at checkout, you can get 15% off any pair that you want. Just go to blueblocks.com, that's BLUBLOX.com, and enter code SUPERHUMAN to save 15%. All right, let's get back to the episode. And I want to give some solace to the people beating themselves up in the audience. And when I say that, I partly mean myself as well, because a lot of this withdrawal from social interaction was done with the best of intentions and social responsibility in mind. Like, I was one of the first people in my community circle, extended family, to be like, no, I'm not, and this was like in February. like, I'm not coming to that wedding of 200 people. That seems like a really bad idea. There's,
Yeah.
500 people with this virus here. And I was very outspoken about, like, stay the F home. We even gave people a discount on our website if they pledged to stay home and do online learning. And so, that's all well and good, but now it's like, okay, that stay at home doesn't mean withdraw from social interaction. I think that's where a lot of us, myself especially, kind of went astray.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think everybody did. I think it's very common because I never liked that we called it socially distanced, because it's more just physical distanced. And I'd heard Dr. Christine Moutier was on, I think, the CNN or some news outlet back when this started. And she said it's because she works for the National Suicide Prevention. And she was saying that to call it socially distanced makes people think that they can't socialize. And I really want people to socialize because, I know from being online and being a mental health professional right now, people's mental health is deteriorating and suicide rates are up. And we really need to have that connection. We need to know we're not alone, that it's okay, that we have support. And so we can be physically distanced, but that doesn't mean we have to be socially distanced. And that's just, I was the same as you, by the way. And we're still those people where I'm like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Or, I'll see things on social media. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of people. I don't feel good about that decision that you made, we have to be responsible. And while I still agree with that, that doesn't mean that I can't make time. Like, we just did a hangout with our friends from Houston last night, just to catch up with them, because we would usually make one trip either direction to connect. And we can still do that through the power of the internet. So
that is very powerful. Now, Katie, you also wrote a book, Are You Okay? Your first book, Are You Okay? A Guide to Caring for Your Mental Health. And I feel like we've touched on a lot of caring for your mental health, but I want to go deeper into that topic on both angles, right? The title, Are You Okay? How do we know if we're okay? How do we know when it's still, I need to meditate more and maybe shake it out, versus when it's, I need to see someone, I need to talk to someone?
Yeah, the way I always compare it is the same. It's like mental health versus mental illness. And I know the word mental illness has a stigma associated with it, but just consider it the same as physical health or physical illness, right? We all have a physical health the same way we all have a mental health. We have to tend to it. Like you said, meditation, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, even just feeding my body, right? Also just checking in with yourself. Maybe you're a journaler. Like, I enjoy journaling, just like one or two things I'm grateful for, something that I'm working on, and something I'm looking forward to, right? Those are simple things we can write down every day to try to just tap in a little bit and focus on maybe a few of the positive things. So there's all those things that we can do to just care for our basic mental health. And now more than ever, we need to be doing that. That's kind of that, like, shaking it out, connection, doing what you can, taking action where you can. However, just the way, right, if we have like a scratchy throat and we're like, oh, I'll sleep a little bit more, I'll drink a little bit more water, maybe it'll go away, I'll feel okay. You're caring for it. But sometimes we get overcome with an illness, right? We get the flu, we get a cold, we don't feel good. And that can happen with our mental health. If we may not be taking care of ourselves, or things just may be too intense and we don't have the tools, we don't know how to care for ourselves. And that's when we can't function. I always tell people, you really need to see a professional when getting up, doing some of the things you need to do every day, you just can't. And I know now more than ever, people feel that way all the time. Like, I just can't get the work done that I used to get done. And that's because we have the weight of this pandemic and race riots and all the stuff that's happening in our world, climate change, fires. I'm in California, and it was like 2 days ago was the first time we could go outside and breathe the air, which is crazy. So considering all of that, if you're struggling to get up and make it to, even if it's just a Zoom meeting, if you're like barely there and you can't focus and you're struggling, and they call it like, different ways of our functioning. So it's like socially functioning, in work or school if we can't function, and if we can't take care of ourselves, like showering and basic needs, reach out to someone. The great thing about one of the silver linings of the coronavirus is that all mental health professionals that I know of are doing things online, meaning that the talk spaces, the BetterHelps, the teledoc or telehealth that you have any time of day, you can find someone to talk to. So reach out, and it's a lot of times cheaper than in person too. So I think that they're great resources to find someone, because getting that outside perspective. I mean, I've been in therapy off and on since I was 15. So don't think that just because I'm a therapist, like I don't have any issues either. That's just not true. I'm a human just like you. And I promise we're not scary. We're just there to listen, to not judge, and to support where we can, offer tools and resources, help move you towards your goals. But yeah, that's really what we should be looking for, our functionality.
That's a really, really powerful litmus test, and I think is one that is going to serve me and the audience for a long time coming. I've also, and I want to give a shining endorsement for anyone out there, if they feel that they need to talk to someone, do it. You know, if you had a physical malady, you would not be ashamed or embarrassed to go to the doctor or the physical therapist or the surgeon. You should have no shame, no embarrassment about going to speak to someone about an emotional or mental malady. And in many ways, it's much more serious because they can be much more life-threatening than that knee that's been hurting you for months on end. And yeah, I've had some really, really great therapists, coaches, counselors throughout the years, some that I see regularly, some that I see, when I need an emergency tune-up, as I call it. But that's a really, really powerful litmus test as to whether or not it's time to go see someone. And there is a wide range, I think, also of therapists, from we'll just kind of listen and ask questions to more coaching oriented. Today, I want to talk about this, and coming to you with, hey, I noticed something in what you said that I think we should maybe address. And I've had the gamut.
Yeah. Every therapist is different. I think that's something that I think people worry about a lot, is like, well, what if I go in to see someone and I don't like them? We don't have to see them again. Ta-da! It's like just like that. And so depending on what you're looking for, like for instance, I, as a therapist, am very directive. I'm more of a tough love type therapist. It's like there's homework, there's follow-ups, there's challenges. I'm not mean, but I'm going to push you because I want you to do better. And that's, if that's not your thing, if you need more hand-holding, you need softer language, you need someone to really feel it with you, then you're going to need a different type of therapist. And it's okay. Like I've had patients come see me once and then say, I'm going to think before I make another appointment. That's fine. It's not about me. It's about you. It's about you getting the right help. So make sure that when you reach out for someone, you pick someone that you feel listens, hears you, and is on your side. Like, that feeling when you first meet someone and you think, I kind of like them. I don't know what it is, but I really like them. I think I could be friends with them. That little feeling we get, we should get that for our therapist, because all research you can read proves that the most important component of therapy is that relationship. You could get the most trained, the best in their field of this, let's say you're struggling with trauma. That's what they specialize in. They've been doing it for 30 years. And if you don't like them and don't feel connected, it's not going to work. So,
absolutely,
make sure that you find someone you click with.
Absolutely. I do want to come back to the title of your book as a vehicle for continuing the question. We've touched a lot on how to care for your mental health. What are some of the other things, daily rituals, daily practices, check-ins, mindsets, things that you are really in favor of for people to do to maintain their mental health? Because I think it is something we need to maintain.
Yeah, 100%. The biggest thing, and I talk about this all the time on my channel, and just with my audience in general, is our self-talk. And so often we have complete conversations going on in our heads. No, that doesn't make you crazy. We all have that inner voice. But you have this conversation going on 24/7, and we don't challenge it. A lot of times we have these horrible thoughts about ourselves and we accept them as facts, even though they're not. They're just thoughts, because thoughts are not facts. And so I always am challenging my patients and my audience alike to pay attention to what you're saying to yourself about your situation, about your environment, about who you are, about what you're capable of. Because so often we have really nasty conversations telling ourselves we're losers, we're lazy, we're stupid, nobody's going to like us. we're so fat, we're so this, we're so that, we're whatever. And so I encourage you to keep track of it, because the interesting thing to note is that of the thoughts we have every day, about 92% of those we've already had before. So we're not really having new thoughts every day. We're just repeating these old conversations. And so if it's happening over and over and over, we want to make sure it's a positive conversation. We want to make sure it's a good one. And I don't believe so much in the you can fake it till you make it. You can try to say something positive about yourself, but you won't believe it. So what I tell everybody to do is utilize bridge statements, which is if we're on one island and that island is the island of negativity, and we're trying to get over to the island of positivity, we have to build a bridge. And so the first, part of that bridge isn't going to be, I'm amazing, I love myself. That first part of that bridge might be, I'm open to the possibility that I don't have all the facts. Maybe that thought is a little skewed. Maybe I'm having a bad day. And so as we kind of build it into a more positive, where it's possible that I'm not as stupid as I think. I did do well on that presentation at work, or I did get a good score on that test at school. And maybe I'm not as dumb as I think I am. And so we try to move it little by little, build that bridge from negative land to positive land. And I swear to God, if people want to put it, if you put in the time, it sounds very tedious and I know it's exhausting, but pick 5 thoughts a day, it will change your life. It is the best thing you can do for yourself.
That is really huge. And I feel like that's the third or fourth big wow moment for me so far of the podcast is bridge statements. And you know what? Okay, I'm really fatalistic. And right now I'm at a place of the environment is doomed. But maybe I just start tomorrow with, there is some hope that we will turn this thing around before 2 degrees Celsius. And then the day after it becomes, there are a lot of great people doing great work. And then the day after that, it becomes, I should start a company in the environmental space. I could contribute something. And then all of a sudden it becomes, we're making great progress as a species.
Yeah, right. And that's a combination of a lot of the things we're talking about, because not only are you trying to improve your thoughts and make them not so fatalistic, a little bit more positive, but then you're taking action where you can. Right. Then there are things that we can do. We don't have to feel frozen or helpless, because helpless and hopeless are very dangerous things to feel. And if there are little things that we can do, I think that's why even just paying attention to our thoughts, that's an action we can take to feel better. And it can help us feel more empowered, which is always my goal, because a powerless person isn't someone we want to be. Right. That doesn't allow for change or growth, which is really important.
Right. It's kind of touches almost on growth mindset and scarcity mindset growth mindset and fixed mindset, where, if you don't believe progress or improvement can be made, you're not looking for ways to make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, Kati, I've just about used up my time with you, and you've fully made me regret that we're just about to finish the podcast for good at 300 episodes. But I do want to ask you, where should people reach out and learn more about you and get in contact?
Yeah, so they can find me on my YouTube channel. Everything on socials for me is Kati Morton. So KATI Morton. That's my YouTube channel. And if they want more of a podcast format where I answer questions in long form, they can look for Ask Kati Anything. I have the video form it's on YouTube as well, or you can just download and listen wherever podcasts are found. And,
Wonderful.
Twitter, everything like that, they can find me wherever.
Wonderful. I'd also love if you could give our audience a piece of practical homework that you would like for them to do. We talked about some different exercises. I know my homework is definitely going to be working on building a thought bridge and shaking it out. But what's maybe another exercise they can do, whether it's reading an article, watching a video, trying an exercise that they can do while they wait for next week's episode?
Yeah, I always encourage people to journal. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to find a piece of paper, open a new doc. And right now, I want you to jot down one thing that you're grateful for, one thing that you're working on that you want to improve, and, one thing that you're looking forward to. And try to do that, if you can, for 5 days in a row. and notice how much better you feel. It's a simple tool. It's a simple thing to do, but it really, really is beneficial.
That's a wonderful exercise. And yeah, journaling is one of those massive impact things that I've picked up throughout the course of 300 episodes and being told to do it enough times that really makes a huge, huge, huge difference for sure. Kati, anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to share with the audience? Anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
Not really. I think the most important thing I always want to get across is know that no matter how weird you think how you feel, you think it's weird, you think something's wrong with you, it's not. You're not alone. There are people to support, and it does get better. With the right help and support, we can all get better and do better.
That is a fantastic note to end on. I almost always ask people what would be the one big message that they would want the audience to take away, but I have a feeling that's the message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is it.
Kati, this has been such a pleasure. I knew I was going to enjoy this podcast, but I didn't realize just how much. So I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your energy and positivity and wisdom with our audience, but also particularly with me today.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.